Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me for this session. And my name is Kanishka, and I'm going to cover basically today and tomorrow of FinTech in Sri Lanka. What is the past, present, and future going to be? So let me give you a little bit of context about me. So I've been in the IT industry for about last 19 years. Started off as a software engineer, then moved on to infrastructure management. Finally, led a large group of companies as a group CIO, and then got into FinTech as a startup, and successfully created 2 FinTech companies in the payment space as well as collection space. So that's my background, and so I'll take you through a bit of slides over here, which I prepared for you to give you a bit of context about FinTech and the background. So first of all, if you look at how financial transactions started, was basically long time back. It was a bartering system, which is basically exchange of goods or services for other goods or services. So probably we say you're a farmer who has cows and you get milk. Probably you will exchange your milk with somebody else who probably provide eggs. So that's how it happened. So while it was going on, then what happened was they created a kind of a currency that is basically out of stones and bones, which they basically exchange stones, which has a value, instead of a good or service. So that's how it created transactions in the past. So then what happened was it eventually came into coins, where they started using a metal piece basically to exchange between goods and services. So from there onwards, the banking was established. So this is where the first paper money was printed in terms of exchanging for goods and services. Now you could use a paper money to pay. So this was initially invented by Chinese. And from there, the checks came into the play. So check was basically a written piece of paper which could be easily given to make a payment. So the e-money was actually created in about 1986, right, with the company of Western Union. So it is pretty much different to the e-money which we have today. It was basically via telegram. You could send money. So through the postal service, you can basically go to the post office, pay certain amount of fee, and you can then basically tell this is the amount that you need to send to another post office, and that other person gets a telegram saying that he has received his money. They go to the post office and declare, take the money out. So this was introduced by Western Union in 1986. So that was the first revolution of money being sent over a wire, would say, through a different media was introduced. Then in 1945, the cards came into play. So cards were basically introduced as the, it was a charge card, which was introduced at the, as the first credit card into the market. From there onwards, mobile banking came into the play. That was in early 2000. So here, the mobile banking was first introduced by European banks. That is through a normal phone, where they could do a simple transaction through mobile banking. Towards 2008, I think contactless payments came into the play. That was basically with the introduction of contactless cards. And if you really look at throughout this journey, from contactless onwards, we have a lot of other apps being introduced like Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, wearable payment devices. Then also into, if you look at the electronic mode, we have payment schemes like Alipay, WeChat Pay, which is based on QR codes. And also there is a lot of other payment services which is happening right now in electronic payments and mobile payments. Right. So if I basically talk to you about FinTech applications, there are so many FinTech applications available in the market. So if you look at starting from lending to payments, payment acquiring, online electronic payments, that is IPG, then you have point of sale payments, then you have issuers, consumer payments, small business needs certain amount of different types of payment schemes, non-profit organization tools are there available for FinTech applications, personal financing, digital investments, remittance is a big area of payments which is happening. Then you have equity financing for investments, institutional investments has a different platform. Likewise, then consumer banking, which is known to most of us, banking infrastructure, ATMs, CDMs, then also you go into the data side of financing, that is also part of FinTech, security and authentication, the biometrics, fraud detection, crowdfunding. Likewise, there are so many applications on FinTech. So if you really look at it in a nutshell, what FinTech is basically technology embedded financial innovations that could result in new business models, which is basically redefining the way that we have transacted and basically getting new technology introduced to streamline the transactions. There can be applications, processors, or products with associated material effect on financial markets or institutions or on the provision of financial services. Right. So what's around FinTech? Now, if you take the FinTech is the core, and there have been other industries which is developing, like for example, insurance has insurance tech, which is also the underlying technology is FinTech. Wealth tech, which is for wealth management. Then we have pension tech. Prop tech is for property. Then reg tech is a very new thing which is in the market. Regulation technology, that is for like central banks to eKYC people. Then we have LendTech, that is a lending platform. So I'll be talking about a lot of these technologies which has been coming over last couple of years. Right. So if you look at it in a nutshell, how the industry works. So we have on one side people, on the other side we have machinery, and we have processors. So if you look at people, we talk about how the personal data protection happens with people. Then we have blockchain, which is a new technology which basically caters to ease out all the transactions based on a platform. Then we have machine which can talk to another machine and basically provide you advice or basically conduct a transaction. Crowdsourcing platforms. So with the data that we gather, the financial systems gather quite a lot of data. With that, we have financial analysts. Then we have banking environment. We have non-banking environment. Now, taxation is a big topic everywhere. So it goes on to digital taxation. Fraud detection is something which is throughout the whole ecosystem. And finally, it comes to new innovations where new things have been introduced. So let's look at Sri Lanka. What's the lineup in Sri Lanka? So we have 3 payment gateway providers in Sri Lanka, apart from the bank payment gateway providers. We have DirectPay, which is one of my startups. Pay Here, which is again a startup about 2.5 years back. And we have WebEx Pay. So these payment gateways are the most popular based payment gateways. when you say payment gateway, it's basically to get an IPG service. So what they do is they basically work with a bank and they do the integration between the bank and the payments merchant, right? So these are the popular payment gateways. Earlier, we had payment gateways through banks, but then it was a bit of a cumbersome process because bank generally would require a lot of document to be submitted, as well as they also would want to do a full KYC process to understand why you would need a payment gateway. That process itself discourages most of the people of obtaining a payment gateway, even if you had a real need. So that was revolutionized, and that basically the problem was solved by a lot of these fintech companies by providing a simpler interface for them to have a payment gateway working with the banks. So Sri Lanka has again some fintech app providers who basically provides payments through either cards, debit cards, credit cards, or even if you look at the CASA payments, that is current accounts and savings accounts, which you can directly link to these payment apps. And through these payment apps, then you can basically make your payments at the doorstep of a merchant. So I will again explain you how these things will happen. Banks also had come forward and has provided certain amount of apps. So we have FreeMe, which is a very famous app, Sampa Pay app, Flash from Commercial Bank, HNB Solo, and the latest one was UPay, which got acquired by Sans Development Bank. Then we have one middleman in Sri Lanka, which is known as the Lanka Clear, which basically builds all these apps, IPGs, everything to work with banks and also with the central bank's guidance in terms of enabling fintech in Sri Lanka. So this is one of the vital players who support all the fintechs across the board in terms of getting things done. So I also would like to introduce the Lanka QR, which has already been approved and regulated by central bank. So like WeChat Pay or Alipay, now in Sri Lanka also most of the apps are being developed in terms of paying through QR. So this resolves the problem of having a POS terminal for each and every merchant at their retail location, because you can simply now have a sticker with a QR code which contains the details of the merchant's bank, and anybody who has a smartphone with a payment app, irrespective of what bank you are in, you can simply go scan the QR code and make a payment. So future, right? So future is going to be really good in terms of making your life better. And that ends my PowerPoint slides. I'll switch into the video. Okay, can you see me? I hope, yeah, right. Okay, so so that was a bit of a nutshell about how the payment ecosystem has gone up to today, how it has transformed, and how things are happening now. So if there is any questions, please go ahead and post so that we would I would basically answer them while I'm going on with the discussion. So we have something here. What kind of skills, talent? Okay, so let's look at a couple of examples. Like now, if you look at really on the fintech ecosystem, it basically revolves around now mostly banking, right? So if you look at most of the other countries, they have gone beyond banking. They have introduced cryptocurrencies. They have gone on blockchain. They use smart contracts. They use payment apps, right? There are virtual banks which basically got licensed in Europe, which doesn't have a single branch, but they completely operate through technology, right? So if you look at next 5 years for us to be competitive, yes, we do need to create a workforce which basically have experience in fintech. Now, if you look at in Sri Lanka, we have very less number of companies who are into fintech. I think it's, to my knowledge, it's about less than 10, right? So we need to create more and more companies, basically giving opportunities for programmers, architects, the security guys, to everybody to start working on fintech products. Because fintech is unlike just developing software, it's a different ballgame because you need to have complete discipline to work with the regulator. So the regulator here is basically the central bank. Most of countries it will be the central bank, but also there are certain other global regulators. Like if you look at Europe, General Data Protection Act is one of the key things which regulates the data on the consumer side. So that will basically needs to be looked into. Apart from that, PSP licenses which is being issued. Everybody can't just process payments, so you need to adhere to a lot of these regulators' standards and then start developing. So that's a pretty much a tedious process. And also, development in fintech is not so easy because there are a lot of systems that need to be integrated. You need to look at fraud, you need to look at auditing. So all those kind of things has to be looked into. So it's a bit of a gaining process in knowledge while you're gaining the skills. So that will create a lot of opportunity for our Sri Lankan guys if we get that kind of knowledge, even to go overseas and work for some of the big giants like PayPal, MasterCard, Visa, like those kind of guys. So we do have a forum which is open for fintech community with all the fintech players currently in the market. We have created a forum. The forum is created basically in terms of giving a lot of fintech knowledge back. So I think to answer your question, what we need to do is we need to get people to get involved in more fintech kind of developments. Not only payments and settlements, but everybody's today after payments and settlements, everybody's looking at retail payments. Probably that is only a niche area, but if you look at lending side, if you look at AI is today one of the core things for fintech. Because now if you want to obtain a loan today from a bank, what happens is you'll be asked to give collaterals. So they'll ask whether you have a land or whether you have asset, all those things. Then they'll ask somebody to come and guarantee for you. So all those processes are there. But if you look at today how the world is moving, it's not like that. All your KYC is done electronically, and there are certain AI tools which gathers social information about you. Through that social information, they create your KYC profile, which can basically give more and more, I would say, background information about you so that the lender can take decisions. Right. So there's another question. Okay, so WooCommerce is, Shopify is not a big deal. So Shopify, you can easily plug in most of the payment gateways. WooCommerce, you need to have certain plugins. So I think as far as I know, the three providers has certain plugins and they have done certain WooCommerce site integrations. So they should be able to support you on that because there are certain, not the WooCommerce or Shopify, but I have gone through some of the experience with some of the US-based clients. It's difficult to add the plugin on payment side. But yeah, so most of the platforms are supported by the payment gateway guys in Sri Lanka. So if you look at banks, the banks generally doesn't support. They generally provide the payment gateway, and you need to work with the integrator or the web developing company in terms of integrating. Yeah. So yeah, so payment gateways currently would support, or even if you want to do a customized development, there will be services will be offered by these payment gateway guys. Right. So on the other context, basically I've got couple of things to discuss. So I'll basically talk about cashless society. So cashless society is something which is a hot topic these days. So we are basically looking at converting today's market or today's society to cashless. So what's cashless? Cashless is basically trying to okay. So we asked to go full screen on this. Okay, I think, yeah. So let me get back on my phone with the questions. Right. The only difficulty I'll have is I won't be able to see the questions. Yeah, so I'll go ahead. So on the cashless society part, so what I was explaining is now, if you look at Sri Lanka is a 90 to 95% cash market. We are a very cash rich society, so we all these payments to be made in cash. So that's the biggest challenge the banks and central bank has, because when you give cash out to the society, that cash sometimes doesn't come back to a bank. So it's completely gets circulated in the unbanking environment. So you can't exactly assess how the market and how it works. So going towards a cashless society, one of the key things is if you basically can walk out of your house without your wallet, and if you can survive a day, that means we are pretty good in cashless society. So we use alternative methods in terms of making payments, such as like mobile payment apps, or maybe the cards, debit cards, credit cards. So we basically don't touch cash. Now, if you look at countries like Norway, people don't carry cash at all. So they are basically using most of the tools, or either they'll use the card in terms of making payment. So this has an impact on the economy, because the moment you go cashless, every transaction what you do gets recorded. So when a transaction is being recorded, systems can identify this is the volume of transaction which is happening, this is the exact market size. Same way, if you take cash and if you get robbed or if you lose your wallet, right, you have no way of, tracing it back or doing anything about it. But when you do a card transaction or if you do an app transaction and if there's a fraud, you can always go back to the bank and say, I did not do the transaction, because there are a lot of ways of checking whether you had been at that particular location at that particular time and whether you have done that transaction. So it gives a lot of security in terms of the consumer, as well as if you look at the beneficiary, that's the merchant. Now, merchant also has a lot of risk in terms of dealing with cash in transit risk, cash receiving risk, right? Forged notes coming into them. So all these risks could be eliminated if you go on to cashless, right? So that's where mostly the central bank to Lanka Clear is pushing all the banking environment, non-banking environment, as well as the FinTech guys to go towards a cashless society. Now, if you take Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka's biggest challenge has been Sri Lanka has been having almost about 85% of the citizens has been covered using a debit card. So we have, I think, close to about 19.5 or 20 million of debit cards being issued. Right? But if you look at credit cards, we only have about 1.5 million. 1.6 million. So here, if you look at the debit card, we have got a good response from the bank. It's almost every person has been issued debit cards. Right? But credit cards is less than, right? And also, if you look at most of the credit cards, the issue is even though it's 1.5 million, the number of people who are using is less than 700,000. So one person has got more than one credit card. So actual usage is about 700,000. So let me take another question here. Okay, so I was actually heading towards your question. Is that right? So if you look at the problem, now Sri Lanka has POS terminals. If you look at the card sweeping terminals, it's about 60 to 65,000. So if you really look at the number of transactions what we do and divided by the number of machines in a day, so our average is less than 5 transactions, right? So people, even though they have been given a card, that means good number of people has cards, they use the card to go and withdraw money from a ATM, use that cash to make payments. So that's the biggest challenge that we have, right? And if you look at why the POS machines, I think we have total about 250,000 retailers in the country, still only 60 has been issued POS machines. Now what happens is the banks are unable to provide POS machines, because if you do only about 4 to 5 transactions a day, that means the cost of that machine cannot be recovered by the bank. And see, now if you look at supermarkets such as Cargill Scales, the number of transactions per day is more than 100 in a POS terminal. So that means there are certain POS terminals which even doesn't do 1 transaction a day. So that is a challenge. So that's where, if you look at China, what they've done is they looked at how the smartphone penetration works in the country. So they have about 80% smartphones in China. So what they did was they simply went to a QR code, which is pasted on a sticker, which has the information about the merchant's financial details like the bank account and everything. And the person who is coming to the retailer would scan the QR code, authenticate and make the payment, right? So that's how China adopted WeChat and even Alipay. So looking at your question, so what do you think that we are not seeing mass adoption of cashless is basically we need to develop that infrastructure in the country, right? So that's where I was showing you the presentation. So now the central bank has done the framework. We have gone with the Lanka QR. Implementations has been done. Now banks are basically working on getting Lanka QR out. So probably next 3 to 4 months, we will be basically having our own national QR system, which is like WeChat and Alipay, which also can transact. To my knowledge, Alipay could even scan it and basically make a payment. So that system will be there. So that's one of the near future things that fintechs will achieve. Right. And okay, so there is a question from Suresh on the fintech blockchain side. Right? So blockchain, now there is a misconception about blockchain being cryptocurrency. So that's two different things. So blockchain is something which everybody is working on, and there are a lot of companies in Sri Lanka also doing blockchain work. So blockchain will be the underlying kind of technology in terms of providing most of the transaction facilitation. Right? Even we use certain amount of blockchain technologies in terms of doing the smart contracts. So every contract will be digitally signed and it will be updated on a blockchain environment so that it will make everybody's life easy and that they will build the trust. So there are a lot of technologies being developed around blockchain concept in terms of getting the fintech industry up. Mostly the biggest barrier Sri Lanka has is, I think as most of you know, cryptocurrencies are not being accepted by central bank. There is a plus side and a negative side on that, because internationally, as a country which with our economic standards, I think it exposes our credit limits and everything. That's why central bank is not accepting cryptocurrencies. For cash-rich countries, it's a good mode of making payments, especially cross-border payments. So we will probably come there in future, but today it's not been accepted. But yes, blockchain definitely would be the ideal thing in terms of going forward to get all the fintech related technologies to support more fast delivery. Right. So what changes would you like to see in the regulatory system to enable startups to thrive in Sri Lanka? Okay, so biggest barrier what we have with the regulators right now is fintech startups are not being allowed to work directly with the regulator. So we always have to go through a bank. So that's one of the biggest things. So central bank was talking about establishing a sandbox where startups could connect and do. But so far, to my knowledge, it has not gone ahead. So we can't basically connect to any of the regulators' requirement. And plus, what we also want to look at on a startup point of view is to have certain flexible rulings to a startup. Now, one of the key things is payment apps. If you want to become a payment app provider, there's a rigorous audit which you need to do with a qualified auditor in terms of launching your app. So in the other countries, with my experience, it's not the case. Generally, for a startup, they allow to transact up to a certain limit. Once they cross that limit, they need to go through the audit. So that was one of the biggest things I think drawbacks most of the startups today has to face, because without the ISO or Basic Security Standard audit, regulators would not want you to publish your app. So that's one of the challenges. Then secondly, the other thing is there is no provision or there is no forum where a fintech or the fintech community could start a dialogue with the authorities. So that's one of the biggest challenges we have faced, because we always have to go through a bank or we have to go through Lanka Clear. Otherwise, there is no way of taking a dialogue with the regulator. Plus, the other thing is now we have had some of the incidents previously for Pay here. So they started the first transaction model on IPG service, and they were stopped for about, I think, almost about 1 year. So when a startup basically comes up with the idea and try to disrupt the market, right, I think the regulators should look at positively and support to get things done. If they're not done it right way, yes, you basically give them a probably a certain amount of period where they could basically get the things, get the act together and get it done the way that the regulator want, rather than just stopping it. So that's one of the challenges most of people has basically have faced. Yeah. So yeah, if the regulator can support with a lot of access and also looking at new innovations and try to accommodate without blocking them, then it would be an ideal thing. Okay, so somebody's asking about best practice, piece of advice in terms of the career, right? So on an entrepreneur, what I would say is the best thing is I believe in three things. One is passion. You need to be always passionate about what you do. That's number one. Number two, you need to be ready to work hard. And number three is you need to have a burning desire to make things happen. So that's the mantra which I use in my life in terms of going up in the ladder. So yeah, it's basically, if you look at the corporate culture is completely different, but in startup space, if you want to do a startup, you need to have the guts to hold it, because holding is something completely different. A lot of people has ideas, they come and put the idea, after a couple of months you don't see them. So that's basically, you're not chasing your passion, you're not basically looking into working hard, and you don't have a burning desire to make it happen. Yeah, so there's another question. Yeah, so yeah, so we are working on this click and go payment gateway. Not only that, even if you look at, there will be a couple of unmanned stores coming pretty soon, right? So you will probably, I think the first unmanned store will be publicly happening at Shangri-La Colombo. So where you will basically, you can walk into a store by just scanning a QR code, and you start buying things. You do the self check-in, and what happens is, if again you will scan the QR code, then what happens is the payment will be seamlessly done. So that's one of the things which probably might be out there in about another 3-4 weeks. Complete unmanned store. You have no cashiers. You will have no people in the store. You just walk in, scan the QR, pick your items, get checked out, scan the QR, you're out from the store. So that's something which is going to come pretty soon. And also, if you like, look at PayPal. So we will also have that set up pretty soon, set up with our FinTech apps. Most of the FinTech apps are working on that. Direct Pay or LPay, then iPay, also Dialog Genie, right? So they will have a seamless integration. You can add all your payment sources, like your bank accounts, cards, or even mobile wallets, right? Even in future, probably the crypto wallets, if we have, and if it is allowed in Sri Lanka, that could be added. And you can do seamless payments. So seamless payments is something which is working towards. That's something Sri Lanka will probably have in about another 6 months to 1 year time. You definitely have it, right? So yeah, so one of the questions is why can't we have just click and go payment gateways like PayPal without business forms? Startup fees, monthly fees. Yes, right. I think with the fintech providers, mostly there is no startup or setup fee. Monthly fees are there. Basically, that is based on the volume commitments. Right? So if you have high volumes, then generally it could be negotiated, because most of the aggregator services, what they do is they basically pay the bank a higher price for setting up and everything, and then they sell it to a bunch of sub-merchants. So to maintain themselves, they need the monthly fee. And if you are a startup or if you're a business which can offer regular transactions on the IPG, it could be waived off in most of the cases. The business registration requirement is basically for the KYC purpose, because there are anti-money laundering policies being set up by most of the banks. So money laundering is a big issue today. So to avoid those kind of things only, they need the KYC. As a part of the KYC process, if you are a business organization and if you want to receive money for business purpose, you need to have a business registration. So this doesn't mean that you need to have a private limited company. It could be even a provincial level company. That means just doing a with your Gram Sevak and Vidari and then getting a registration would do still. Right? So that's a simple way of getting it done. But we also have had a discussion with the central bank in terms of relaxing certain amount of KYC requirements, like for example, if you say a freelancer, how a freelancer could basically receive payments locally. But a freelancer would not ideally have a business registration. How would they do? So those kind of things, still we are also trying to get central bank and give us some solutions on that. Okay, so a good question. What advice can you give people who intend to do fintech-based startups? Right? I would say first, do a bit of background check and see whether the concept or the idea which you are going to basically develop or basically set up as a startup has any existing regulation barriers. Now, how do you check? Where do you check is the question, right? So if you go to central bank and if you go to central bank website, or even if you type it in Google saying central bank circulars, right? You'll come to a page where they have all the circulars. Right? So whatever the particular area that you're trying to work out, go into that particular area, whether it's payment settlements or financial, go into that particular area and read out the circulars which they have lined up there. That will give you an idea whether your project could be accommodated or whether it could be basically something which they have not thought about and whether you can disrupt. So that's the first thing where you can get your idea validated through going through that process. And second thing is look at a couple of startups who have already tried to do similar things, right? And see find out the loophole where they failed or whether what actually made them successful. That can give you a bit of understanding about whether the direction which you're taking is right or wrong. So that's something I would definitely tell you as advice. Then, see, fintech is a very small community here, right? And this market still has a lot of opportunities. This is a 95% cash market. In a 95% cash market, you have big room to play. Try to work with other fintechs. Try and see. You don't need to disclose your idea, but try to work with them because they might be in a position where they can help you in terms of at least telling you, if you do this, this is where you will head. If you do this way, there is a way to sneak out, or whether it could basically put you into trouble. So that piece of advice would be ideal at this stage if you are trying to start something new. Also, you can always go talk to Lanka Clear, because Lanka Clear also will basically give you a lot of help in terms of guiding you. That's one thing that I want to share. So on the follow-up on the previous question, so the problem lies in the regulatory side. Not really. There is certain amount of problems with the regulator also, but if you really look at, there are a lot of workarounds now. Even for KYC verification now, right now the process is, if you want to operate as a business, you need to have business registration, right? But if you're working as a freelancer, then there are some alternative workarounds. If you can prove yourself that probably you are a freelancer and you basically have a certain amount of business transaction which is happening, so that information could be helpful of re-verifying you. So with that, you can basically, I would not point out straight to the regulator, but there are workarounds that you can do on that. Yes, if the regulator is flexible, it will be much more easier. Right. Okay. How do you identify the right product to the market? Okay. So I'll tell you a bit of background about DirectPay. So when we started DirectPay, we actually wanted to build a payment app, right? So if you look at the ideology was behind this, that we didn't have payment apps, mobile payment apps, which could basically simply go to a merchant and use the app and make the payment. So when we built that infrastructure, we understood that there are a lot of other issues which we could resolve around payments. So that was one of the key we identified through this. So now the same time when we started DirectPay, Dialog Genie was out, then UPay came into the scene, iPay also was there. So what we looked at was like everybody is running after consumers, right? So if you take UPay is a lifestyle app, Genie is a lifestyle app, iPay was a lifestyle app, right? So we also was in the lifestyle space, but we separated ourselves from lifestyle, and what we did was we basically went into the corporate side, the business to business side. So if you look at how a retailer would pay their supplier, how a retailer would pay their dealer and the distributor, and how the distributor would pay the company. So we worked on those cycles. How do you digitize the business to business payments, right? Leaving out the consumer to business payment side for the time being, because the market was not ready at that time. Or even now, if you look at with the mobile payment apps and the investment which has gone, if you look at the Sri Lankan market, I think the investment size is about close to about last year. Altogether, FinTech apps would have invested about 500 to 600 million. Right? So, has the market given any return back to recover that investment? Was a question mark. So, if you really look at today, a consumer, the first choice of payment is not a mobile app. If you go to India, it's completely different. Their first choice of payment is a mobile app, and also basically they would want to get into mobile app payments because the lifestyle has changed and the market is there. But in our country, still people's first choice would be cash. Right? It will slowly change into other payment methods. We basically looked at that, and we also looked at basically looking at cash getting converted into digital money at certain points. So that was one of the things. So we do have another product line which works as cash deposit machines. Retailers can go and deposit their money into a cash deposit machine. So that would basically help them in terms of reducing the risk of keeping cash throughout the night. So those were a couple of things that I would say. So sometimes what happens is you might have the right technology, you might have the right product, but you need to wait for the right market. So that's one of the things. Then the second thing is, if you really look at the techniques, what we used in terms of getting people to use is, we basically showed the benefit or rather the value to the merchant, because it's a customer's choice, but it's the merchant who is end of the day accepting it, right? So if you look at a credit card today, if somebody swipes a credit card, it will be about 3%. Right? Now, for a merchant like Kiehl's, Cargill's, or a big fashion outlet, 3% is not big money because they have enough volumes. But if you take a small corner shop who is selling bread, right? Probably he's going to make about 5% out of selling a bread. And if the 3% goes for the card, he's left with 2%, which is going to be taken off from his bottom margin. So that is going to be a real problem for small merchants. So that's why they don't even encourage to accept card payments. So you would have seen that they would say, if you're paying through card, we'll add 3%. So those kind of problems have been coming up from the market. So what we did was we educated the merchants. If you do on a QR-based payment with account-to-account transfer, you can probably do it less than 1.5%, which was a considerable take-up from the market. So you need to identify who is your customer. Here, yes, the payment app will be used by a consumer, but our customer is not going to be the consumer. It is going to be the merchant. Merchant is the guy who's going to pay us, right? So you need to identify very carefully who is your merchant and work with the merchant, right? I'll take a couple of other questions. Yeah. So one is asking about the biotech. I'm not too sure about the how can we tackle the people who has limited knowledge about biotech into. If you can elaborate the question a little bit more. Oh, sorry, I think he has made a mistake. Yeah, it's about FinTech. Yeah, so the biggest problem what we also have right now is we have, as a country, I think we have almost about 23 million plus SIM cards been issued, right? If you look at the statistics says that we have 40% of our population has smartphones, right? But if you really look at the Facebook usage or the social media usage is about 6 million. So that's fairly about between 25 and 30% of our population. So how do we get people who are not so tech savvy into FinTech? That's a challenge, right? That's actually a challenge. And also, if you look at the unbanked people, I think in the world there is about 2.4 billion people who is unbanked. So how do you get these kind of guys into a regulated system? So that's the challenge, right? So a couple of things. What we do is we also go into a lot of outside locations and try to educate people and try to show them the value additions that we can do and how we can create convenience. Now, if you take some villages, you need to walk, or rather you need to cycle about 5 kilometers to get into town. In some cases, it's about 20 kilometers to get into ATM, right? So these people will never come into banking system because of the convenience issue. So that's the target market we're looking at, basically by introducing a mobile app so that they could simply log into the app, because better connectivity is almost in the country is, I would say, is better than it was, and it's going to be good. So if they can do their banking through a mobile without traveling 20 kilometers, that would be the ideal scenario that we could disrupt. So that's something what we are looking at. So we work with a lot of NGOs in terms of educating them. So I'll look at another question. So are people reluctant to use? Yeah. Trust is a problem right now. Most of people doesn't want to give the bank account details, and because what happens is the moment you give, they basically look at your behavior. They basically try to give you a lot of cross promotions and stuff. So it might be a nuisance for some of the people. At the same time, I mean, our experience was basically if you take the apps like FreeMe, Genie is still coming up now. FreeMe, I think they did a good job in terms of getting people to, I would say, get used to digital payment. So that was a good lead, but whether that investment which they made on cashback and all these offers, whether it actually paid off their effort is a question mark. And also same time, now when you start using cashback as an option for people to adopt to FinTech, that's a killer for everybody else, because startups would never be able to throw, and they will not have so much of deep pockets to fund campaigns like that. Then what happens is big banks again coming into FinTech, right? Which I would say would basically look at their own interest only. So that's one of the challenges what we have, right? But if you really look at, yes, FreeMe's operation actually created some of the people there. I think they have, I'm not too sure about their user base. They probably have about 100,000 plus. So that 100,000 has gone through the first experience of a payment app. So that's a good start, right? So that will continue, because now even if you look at all the things, cards has been there in the Sri Lankan market for about last 25 years, right? Still card usage is not there, right? So it takes generally for every country so many years in getting people to adopt. Now we have certain experience in cash deposit machines. When we first started in 2012, we didn't have even 10 people going into a cash deposit machine and depositing money, right? Today, we have over 100 people on a day going into a cash deposit machine, right? That is a behavioral change, and that took about 5 years for us to get there. So that behavioral change has to be established with the need creation. Today, everybody is looking after convenience. So if you really focus on convenience and go, yes, it will basically build the trust. And same time, we also need to take precaution in terms of make sure that all the activities on financial transaction is done properly, and we have to be extra careful about frauds. So I'll take another question. Yeah, so answer to Ashant's question. So financial technology, I mean, in a layman's point of view, you would probably not know about fintech or financial technology, right? I'll give you an example, right? If you really look at somebody who wants to travel in a three-wheeler, right? Today what they will do is they will either take with me or Uber or any taxi app, right? The need is what? To travel from one location to another location. Right? As a fulfillment of that need, there is a byproduct which is being traded. The byproduct is there is a way to pay. Right? So that's a byproduct. So nobody is really interested in financial technology, and nobody, when you get into the three-wheeler, you're not going to think, how am I going to make the payment? Right? You're thinking basically going from one location to another location. That's your need. Right? So fintech should be something which is underlying and basically fulfilling people's need on a platform where the transaction, the byproduct, automatically gets settled. Right? So that's the convenience, because now if you even go to a, let's say, to a supermarket, and if your card doesn't have enough money and you don't have cash in your hand, is there another alternative way? Right? Say you have a credit card and you don't have enough money, right? So you don't have the debit card with you, but you have money in your account. Is there any other way? Or simply, we say you run out of cash, right? An emergency, and you want to obtain a quick loan, right? You had been a very good customer of the bank. You had a good credit history. Right? Is there an alternative way in a click of a button where you can obtain a cash advance, right? So your need is cash or to make a payment or basically settle somebody, right? So you don't need to necessarily understand how the technology works. So that's where the financial technology or the fintech should address to fulfill the need, right? Not actually educating people about fintech and telling this is how your money will be debited from your account and this is how. Right, so I'll take, yeah. So if there's anything else, please post, then I will answer. And same time, so I'll also give you a little bit of insight about PayPal, because that is also one of the biggest questions that these days everybody is talking about. Why Sri Lankans can pay out using PayPal, but not receiving money into the country through PayPal. Right? So looking at that in a larger way, generally, if a country has about 40% plus customer base who is using credit cards, they are prone to have a healthy e-commerce environment. Now, Sri Lanka, only the card base is about 1.5%, which is 1.5 million, which is less than even 10%. Right? So that's where PayPal is not interested to look at Sri Lanka as a country, because they see that the e-commerce is not going to eventually come up, because PayPal basically support e-commerce. They run on e-commerce, right? And they basically support on credit. So that's where they are not interested to look at us. And also same time, right? There is no substantial proven record, because most of the freelancers and other people, what they do is they basically put a different address in a different foreign country and create the account. So they don't see that money is exactly coming to Sri Lanka as the endpoint. So that is also one of the things that we need to basically look at, creating direct avenues where money could come. Yeah. So the other areas which I wanted to talk and highlight about FinTech is not only limited to payments and settlements. There are a lot of other things which you can do with AI. There are a lot of things which you can do with basically with the big data, processing the big data and analyzing your consumer behavior patterns, right? You can basically do consumer payment planning, savings planning, lending, all those things by using different fintech approaches. Right. So Okay, so how small businesses can profit from fintech? So it's an interesting area. So now we say you started a small business and you wanted to basically have a payment method, right? So right now, most of the small businesses, how they accept payment is cash, right? Because if you go to even to a bank and ask for a card machine, it probably cost you, either it will cost you or otherwise the bank won't provide it just as your wish, right? So you have to go with cash, right? Now, fintechs will enable you a lot of ways. They can give you IPGs. There are payment terminals for lesser price. Like, a lot of things are there. And also, certain fintechs, they can enable you as a digital merchant. Right? So those are the things where a small business could actually benefit out of. End of the day, fintechs will enable you to get paid. If you only have the method of cash, it will give the fintechs will bring you a lot of other ways. And also the other thing is the cross-border payments, receiving cross-border payments. That's a big challenge. So if you're we say a local manufacturer or basically you're providing certain services to overseas customers, how do you get paid? So that's again another area a fintech could basically help you. Right. So I think I'll take this one last question. Yes, it is not like if you do cashback promotions, that's going to be a big problem for everybody, because that will now when people get used to cashback, right? They expect everybody who wants to come into whether there is offers, right? So then end of the day, what happens is you're basically creating an unhealthy environment for especially for startups to come into the market, as well as it will basically completely create it will get the consumers to not to see the actual benefit of fintech. They will basically now, even most of the known people who go for cashback only goes to payment for cashback. Then actually the fintech is bleeding because their money is basically on the transaction volume or rather the commission. So if you look at the commission versus the cashback that you get, right, you're not going to basically make anything out of that. So that, in my view, it's a bad practice. So if they had come up with better, reasonable ways of promoting it, it would have been ideal. So I think time is limited for me. So I'll wrap it up by basically giving you a little bit of overview of what's going to be in the future. So fintechs basically will certainly enable more businesses for a lot of small timers, as well as for a lot of people who wanted to get into business. And it will definitely create a lot of I would say convenience for people seamlessly to make payments, as well as not to too much worry about paying for their services. And it will also automate their savings patterns, investments, and a lot of things. So yeah, so there are few fintechs which are working in Sri Lanka, and I would invite anybody who would want to get into fintech, come work with the community. We will build Sri Lanka as a good destination for fintech products, and we can probably take one or two good fintech products out of the country and bring good revenue back to the country. So with that thought, I will basically wrap it up. So I thank you, thank all of you who have been there online, and I would also want to thank the Sustainable Education Foundation, which basically invited me to do this workshop. Yeah, right. So okay. Good night. Thank you.